Welcome back to The Price of Business. I'm your host, Kevin Price, talking to you about you and your business. Already the final segment in a very fast-paced, action-filled program, talking about the brutal beating of America economically as it went from the pinnacle, among the pinnacle of economically free and great countries to really kind of mediocre. In fact, I think we went from mostly free, which was the Hong Kong category, to now, aren't we now the category just below that, Dr. Lawson, of SMU?
Yeah, we're, well, like I say, 17th. So, you look at some of the countries above us, you're talking like Finland, Denmark.
Finland.
Northern European social welfare states. I mean, sometimes we casually call them socialists. They're not really. But, it's kind of shocking to see us.
Why are they not socialists?
That low. Say that?
Why are they not socialists?
Well, I mean, I think, if you're a Danish citizen, you wake up and you go to, in a private home, you go to a private workplace, you sell your products on the market in the world. It's fundamentally a market economy. They just have crazy high taxes and stupid regulations. But if you want to see socialism, go to the other end of our scale. Go down to Venezuela. The People's Republic of Venezuela. That's socialism. So,
well, the basic classic definition of socialism is government control or ownership of the means of production.
It's a scale. I just think that somewhere.
And so there's an enormous amount of control in those countries. Hey, there's an enormous amount of control in the good old U.S. of A. I think we become increasingly socialist.
I think we have. I think it's just a continuum. You're absolutely right. I mean, there's no bright line, and I just kind of like to reserve the use of that word for the hardcore cases like the Venezuelas, but it's all semantics.
Yeah, absolutely. It is semantics. So let's talk about the 17 countries that are above, or 16 countries above the United States. But my understanding is that you had mostly free or largely free. Didn't you break it down into those kind of categories, or am I getting confused? Because you're not the only guys who are in this game. There's others who talk about this. Yeah,
we do have 4 categories. I mean, it's all on a number scale, so it's kind of arbitrary, but we usually do break it down between free or mostly free, relatively unfree, mostly unfree, and there's a nice color-coded map.
And where are we?
We're still in the mostly free category. We have 152 countries, and if you're just doing it by 25% groups, we'd have to get down to around 40.
I think it's Heritage in Wall Street. Their group has this one category below mostly free. Is that probably true?
I think Heritage does that, yeah.
Yeah. And so how far are we away from the next category?
Well, in some ways, we might have bottomed out a little bit. Having said that, there's one area of the index that I'm really worried about, and that's the money and inflation area. We've held, the official data that we use, we've held the line there. Our numbers are still pretty good. They're like 9, 8.5 out of 10. But if the tripling of the Fed's balance sheet causes the inflation that some of us think it might, that could absolutely destroy this index. And we could go from 17 to 35, 40. We could just drop right into the middle of the pack.
Oh, my God. And our monetary policies are really frightening. All of our options are pretty sickening, aren't they?
They are. And, it's not just spending either. And that's the really worrisome thing about this. If it was just spending, I wouldn't worry too much about it. Congress eventually will I'm not saying they'll figure it out, but we know how to stop spending. I mean, it's possible. I don't know how I fix corrupt courts. You just don't write a new law to fix that problem.
Yeah.
So that's really the worrisome thing is when you look at the soft parts of a market economy, like a culture of non-corruption, a culture of impartiality, sensible regulations where you're not playing favorites. We're losing that, and that's what these numbers are showing us. That's the real crazy thing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Talking a little bit to Professor Robert Lawson. He's with SMU. He also works with the Fraser Institute. They do this Economic Freedom Index annually. He's been doing it now for almost 20 years. Economicfreedom.org. United States ranked 17. I'm sure Hong Kong's number 1 as always.
Yes. Yeah. Always Hong Kong. And then Singapore. They're pretty much 1 and 2.
Are you seeing any major changes in the way they do business, either one of those countries?
Well, not really. I mean, you're seeing some slippage, but the great fears about China taking over Hong Kong just really haven't materialized. There are most of the problems that are going on in Hong Kong have nothing to do with Beijing. They have to do with Hong Kong politics now. So they just instituted a minimum wage. I think it's trivial. It's like $2 an hour or something, but but it's sort of the camel's nose under the tent. They had no minimum wage. Now they have one, and now you got the sort of domestic politics in Hong Kong, or will they work like they do here? People will say, hey, how about $3? How about $4? And so I think
and that's how it all begins, isn't it? It really becomes a slippery sliding slope after that. I think if the 0.5% of tax was the initial income tax that we had, that's nothing. That's inconsequential. In fact, I think someone proposed legislation to put a ceiling on it at like 5%, and it was like alarming. Are you kidding? We don't even want to have the thought of doing that type of thing. Well, in retrospect, I'm sure we all wish we did.
Yep.
And so you just begin with one little area, and it slowly begins to encroach. That's sad about the minimum wage.
But still, they're so far in front. It's not really close right now.
So, and then in the Western Hemisphere, who is on that list above us?
Well, pretty much nobody above us. Well, Canada, actually, take that back.
Canada's
ranked 8th right now, and they've been hovering in that sort of 4 to single digits. And they haven't, that's the thing about this decline that we see in the U.S., it hasn't infected our sort of peer nations when you think of Canada, United Kingdom. And those countries they've gone down a little bit, but they really held the line. And it's really just a U.S. specific thing that we're talking about.
Yeah, and Canada has become kind of interesting. They've got these, progressive conservatives who historically, their party, the Progressive Conservative Party that's ruling there, historically have been more progressive than conservative. But these guys seem a little more free market than some of the ones they've had in the past.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I mean, obviously they got no shortage of stupid policies in Canada, but when it comes to like fiscal discipline, I mean, they've been on a tear for a decade, 15 years now. They've really figured out how to live within their means, which our Congress can't.
Yeah.
So that right there is a big difference between the two countries now. They may have their national health, but
and they're even talking about reforming that. There's procedures going on to try to deregulate some of that. At least that's my reading.
No, yeah, absolutely. I mean, national health is really not working very well. In fact, the Fraser Institute, who publishes our report, they do great work on the waiting lines and such in the Canadian health system. But again, if you're going to have that thing, you got to pay for it.
Yeah,
you just can't pass it on to future generations like we're trying to do.
It's democracy at its worst, isn't it? As we steal from the futures of those who aren't even born yet, let alone can't vote.
Well, that's why we do it, because they can't vote, right?
That's exactly right. That's why, I'll start getting really cranky in my politics and start talking about the difference between republics and democracies. But really, that's what it comes down to, is rule of law, isn't it? That's what made America unique, was the rule of law.
And that's again where the numbers are falling the most. That's again, it's terrifying typing these numbers in the computer every year.
And Canada's windfall for having more fiscal discipline on the spending side is they're now very, very competitive to us on the tax side. And it seems like every time I hear about a change in Canada's tax code, it's towards a better, more economically generatingly positive tax code. Your thoughts?
Well, I think, and we're seeing the evidence for that in the strong Canadian dollar. I mean, that's basically investment flow and going to Canada is driving up the value of the dollar. You remember when the Canadian dollar was, 60% of the U.S. dollar. Now they're on par.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's incredible. And I remember when I was a kid, it was like $1.40 or something like that. It's amazing how much it's gone. What about Chile? Chile's the only one that usually tends to be close.
Yeah, they're currently ranked 11th. They're hovering right around 10, 11 every year now. Obviously it's come way up in the 70s. The ratings we had we have ratings all the way back to the 70s. I mean, under Allende in the early years of Pinochet, they were just bottom of the barrel. But under Pinochet, and he wasn't a good man really, but
he knew economic freedom. He could care less about the rest, but he knew economic freedom. So 11's above us as well. Chile and Canada, pretty sad. Hey, you know what? You did a great job. We're going to have to get you on before a year from now. Professor Robert Lawson, and he is at SMU University. A great report, economicfreedom.org. Check it out. Thanks again, my friend.
Thanks, Kevin.
Have a great rest of your day, my friends. We'll be with you tomorrow for another Price of Business on this great station.